So this is our demo software. It's identical to our regular UTM software. I'll delete the data that we have just so we can start fresh. So we have no test data. We select a method. We're going to select tensile. Obviously you only see 3 test methods here, but there are more in the configurations. They're just not activated. We'll go to test number. We'll input let's say rebar sample number 1. Usually we use numbers, but this is all up to the customer, of course. So for example, we're in Korea, say the customer is ELE, performed by Matt. We'll input 32 millimeter diameter, and it'll automatically calculate the area for you because I selected the round sample. I'll show you that again. Hit apply. Now come to the right bottom corner. Here you select your max load range, your speed. You could test with displacement, millimeters per minute, by load, kilogram force per minute, or newtons per minute, kilonewtons per minute. We could change this. Stress, so we'll do 10 millimeters per minute. You also have the option to do a one-step test or a multi-step test. I'll just start the test. So here you see our relative graph. See displacement and load. This is your stress strain curve. Here you see our time graph, time and load. Okay, so I'm going to save this data. We'll go to analysis. Here we only have one graph because we did the one test. This is where you do your yield point. It's automatic, 2% offset, 0.2 offset. Set your upper line and your lower line. Oh, too high. Here you could also export to raw data. You could export this to Excel. You could export this to a text file. A lot of times customers share information this way between companies. We could also print this report to Excel. As you see here, the information we input prior to the test is already filled out for us. Push the graph a little. The test summary is shown here. Obviously, you could edit this any way you want. To put the buyer's name. You could even change the subject. Sample number 1. To save this, I won't save it. You could also export to a picture. This is print preview. You could do a JPG print, JPG export. Could also export to PDF file. You could change the units here. So we're on kilonewtons. You could change to kilogram force or pound force, whatever the customer wants. Inches, millimeters. Of course, we have the area, the max load, the yield load, yield strength, gauge, maximum displacement, stream, modulus, test. You could configure this. Okay, let me put in the password. I'll show you the configurations. We have our test end options. So here you see load end 50%. So after the load goes to its peak, if it drops 50% on tensile test, it'll automatically stop the test. Obviously, this is a pre-programmed graph, so it's not going to follow this law or follow this trigger. You have your auto return options. Be careful with the auto return options because if you're doing tensile tests, you could pull two test specimens apart and then it'll auto return to its original position and it'll smash the two test pieces together. If you're doing compression, auto return is an option, or even bending, because the crosshead is moving down to break the sample and then returning back up safely. Whereas tensile, it's pulling them apart and then it'll return back to its original position, which will damage the specimen. Here we have some settings that we recommend you do not touch. The PID, the cyclic keeping test, unless your customer requires these tests. We have the graph settings. We have the movement settings. These settings have to match the indicator, the controller, the capacity. We can change it to a 1-step, 4-step. Change the unit on this. It's the test methods. The demo machine doesn't have all the newest test methods. We have about 15, I believe. Right here, we're showing about 11. This is your connection options. If you have any connection issues, you come here to change the settings. The baud rate and communication number is usually the two things you touch on this. And then the point, this is where you decide the decimal point. So for example, you could have 2 behind the decimal point for kilogram force, 4 behind for Newton, no, I'm sorry, 2 behind for newtons, 4 behind for kilonewtons. It's really all up to you. Obviously, there's a max resolution, but there are options. Same thing for displacement. Obviously, these are different for every load range. Generally speaking, load range 4 has more decimal points. And that's pretty much it.